Well, Thursday. That means that the record player's set up. I have a drink, and I am sitting here in front of my low-tech webcam for another uh, trip down memory lane. And looking at the timeline for this one, this wraps up 1999 for me. Um, and that's funny. One of like those memories that I have, and this didn't make the book because it's just this really small like aside, is I can remember like sitting in my room on like New Year's Eve, like 1998 going into 1999, um, writing and doing stuff, and they were promoting the radio was promoting like an REO Speedwagon concert or something or other that was going to happen, and like my mom came in and went, "Oh, REO Speedwagon on New Year's Eve, that'd be like really kind of neat," and then it got later in the night, and as midnight hit, the radio station played Prince's 1999. Then the DJ comes on, wishes everybody, Happy New Year, and you're going to be listening to that song all year, which was true. Like the radio station I listened to just played that probably once every other day. Um, and then that year just like flies by. So knowing that now here I am writing all these years later about going into 2000, it's just kind of fun for me. So it's a couple of chapters. The music will of course be down in the thing, and then this is going to be the first. So I reuse a song a couple of times in my writing, but there's a reason to it, and that is Rocky Horror Picture Show's Time Warp. Um, and part of that is just a little bit of creative license, but also right off the bat in this first story, uh, explains why this song, of all things, it's just a jump to the left. The night of the first choir concert of my sophomore year was also going to be a joint concert with the symphonic band, performing band, and orchestra. So, along with taking stage with my choir friends for the first time that year, it also meant seeing Corey and Adrian, and Aaron and Meg in action as well. It was one of the few times we were all performing together, but us all being together was a bit of a preview of things to come in the following months as we continued to hang out. The tech crew of Blaine, Jeremy, Zan, David, and me, joined by Tammy, planned our arrival to be at 4:30 p.m. for a 7:30 p.m. show. And while choir call times were closer to 6, as tech crew, we just wanted to be prepared for anything. Blaine, Tammy, and I walked through the doors of the performing arts hallway with McDonald's in hand, and Wendy threw me her keys. We jumped on the stage and started to get things set up, taking bites in between. Shortly thereafter, the rest of Stars arrived, also with food and drink. We lowered the band shell, set up the risers, plugged in the mics and speakers, and brought out the piano. Once we had it all set up, Wendy gave us a nod of approval and told us to get a break in before the choir showed up. As we rushed to finish eating before we changed into our choir tuxedos, I stood on the stage and jumped to the left, which caught the attention of my friends. Then I took a step to the right. What the hell is happening? Tammy asked. It's just a jump to the left and a step to the right, I responded. You put your hands on your hips and bring your knees in tight. Grinning, I continued to narrate the lyrics of Time Warp, but it's the pelvic thrust that really drives him insane. I did an outrageously dramatic thrust and rotation as I jumped and faced my left, kicking into the air. Let's do the time warp again. I did a 180 followed by more kicks. Let's do the time warp again. Matt has lost his mind, Blaine said. No, I'm a creature of superstition, and will always do the time warp before a performance. I did it freshman year before I got here, but now I'm gonna do it on stage before each show, I said, turning off the soundboard. And you better believe I did it. Come hell or high water, sickness or soreness, before each concert or performance throughout high school. Because one does not pass up the chance to do the time warp from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Band, orchestra, and choir performed that evening, showcasing Mountain Point's musical performing arts. Downbeat sang Java Jive for the first time. The Downbeat women had their own section of music that they performed without us guys. A cappella ended the choir portion with a gospel tune featuring Laura as a soloist, and Diana and Jen K and Tamara as a gospel trio. Symphonic band ended our show, and afterwards our little group of friends all hung out in the lobby between familial cheers while also praising each other for a concert well done. It was shortly thereafter that those of us in choir learned the destination of our combined choir orchestra band spring tour scheduled for March. One morning, Wendy got a cappella's attention and announced the first ever tour of the entire Mountain Point's Performing Arts Department. "We're going to Disney World," she exclaimed. The eruption of cheers from the choir was loud and immediate. She explained it was going to be a 5-day tour. We would park hop and stay on the resort and only really have to perform for a few hours on one night. She then talked specifics such as cost and fundraising and the need for chaperones. "My dad'll do it," I announced. "Don't you want to talk to him?" Wendy asked. "My dad'll do it. Write him down now, and if something changes, I'll let you know. But he'll do it." And I said this with conviction. After school, I walked home and through the door of our apartment. All smiles. My dad was in the kitchen with my mom. Sarah was in the living room, and they asked me how my day had gone. "So we found out where we're going for tour," I said. "And Dad, I said you would be a chaperone." My dad was a member of the faculty at Mesa Community College at the time, and I could see a bit of "what have you done" look on his face. "Why'd you do that, kid? I've got classes," he asked. "Well, the thing is, we're going to Disney World. 5 days, park hopper passes, and only an evening of performing. It's choir, band, and orchestra, and we need chaperones, so I said you would do it," I responded, leaning up against the wall, and pretty sure I knew my dad's response before he said it. My dad took a second, then he smiled. "I'll get someone to cover for me." You see, going to Disney World was always on my dad's bucket list, and being able to get him a chance to go was really something I couldn't pass up. I knew we may not end up hanging out at the park every minute of every day together, but just the fact that I could give my dad that opportunity was really special, and one of my favorite memories of high school. And all my musical persuasions left me reaching for the stars. The rest of October of that year is a bit of a blur. We typically hung out at Blaine's and watched movies. Blaine's house was the go-to for our small family, and Halloween was perfect for horror movies. With scares on the schedule, our lovely female friends, who, let's be fair, were not always particularly into horror movies, got snuggled in and put up with us. Our group was never one to shy away from an affection or the occasional quick smack if quoting the movie became too much or, Blaine tried to spook everyone. And then, as October turned into November, I began a new hobby: painting fantasy wargame miniatures. More specifically, I bought boxes of plastic Warhammer zombies to paint and decorate my room with. I quickly amassed mobs, and I mean mobs, of flesh eaters, paints, brushes, and glues. My parents bought me a light, and my favorite place in the world was painting or performing in my room in front of a wide open window. And when I say performing, I mean it. I would sing and dance and play to a pretend crowd, the whole thing. When I was in high school, one of the local radio stations, the Mix 96.9 FM, would have a 2 hour block of 80s music on like Fridays and Saturday nights. I would get a blank tape and record songs off the radio and dance and sing. And then, when the block of music was over, go right into my CD collection and play those as well, continuing performance. If anyone ever walked by, they saw one hell of a show, because I never cared if they saw me or not. If they did, I considered them part of the crowd. I'd wave as they passed by. I used my TV remote as a microphone, and I would do this for hours. I would turn off all the lights in my room, illuminated by one damn lamppost that sat right outside of our front door, illuminating my room. I was happy. Voice cracking? No problem. Changing the key of a song that a high-ranged tenor would sing? All in. Don't Stop Believin', followed by Stuck With You, followed by Flock of Seagulls. You want it? I had it. It was just the place for me to cut loose and be uncontrollably happy. If it wasn't Friday or Saturday night blocks of 80s music on the radio, it was CDs and mixtapes. I sang through the library of REO Speedwagon. I'd break it up with some Tom Petty or Men at Work. Switching between Journey and Styx was fun. ABC's Look of Love to Mr. and Mistress Curie to Everything Louder Than Everything Else by Meatloaf allowed me to shift into singing tone and also performance style. I would take that energy with me into choir, like an internal 80s lead singer ready to burst out. But due to the choir repertoire, I just didn't have an outlet for it. I introduced myself to a lot of music thanks to those window concerts, and some songs would just stick with me forever. One such example would be the song Tarzan Boy by Baltimora. I would stand at my window singing that song and Tarzan yelling any chance I got, much to the entertainment and ear covering of anyone around to see it. I would spend my nights writing, singing, painting, and anyone who ever saw me in that window would know that while I was there was nothing that could bring me down. Oh, how they pound, raising their sound. November was just as much of a whirlwind. Katie and I would talk on the phone quite often, and I got to know Pam more as well. Katie would come over, we'd go out for drives, and she would continually bombard me with country music. It would be something I would forever associate with her, to be honest. We flirted and chatted, and my affection for her definitely continued to grow. One memorable night, she came over to pick me up, and before we had even left where she parked, she passionately kissed me. I've been wanting to do that all day, she said before putting the car in drive. I was smitten. That was for sure. Blinded may have even been a better word for it. We kissed a few more times, something that I even kept track in a journal that Katie gifted me as an example of my teenage angst, and being caught up by the attention of a senior girl was, well, it was one hell of a drug. There was something that was becoming a bit obvious, though, as time went on. Katie was developing feelings for Blaine. And even though he had a girlfriend at the time in the same choir we were all in, her feelings came on strong. I could feel my heart tense up, and internally I wanted to scream, "Holy hell!" Blaine would have girls crush on him with almost no effort, or at least that's how it seemed to me. As November continued, our choir planned for the upcoming winter and Christmas concert. It was becoming increasingly obvious that Katie had her eyes on Blaine, and any hope I had of dating her was slipping away fast. I'd regale my woes to Diana and Xandar in our early morning hangouts, and I also thought of approaching Blaine about the issue. He seemed a bit surprised at any attention Katie would give him, because to him, she was a friend of his, but not a potential romantic partner. Fully entrenched and downbeat in my feelings for Katie, I was blind to how fast things were happening. As December crept in quickly, Blaine and Katie started to hang out more, and Katie's infatuation grew. She would call me to talk about Blaine or ask me to get Blaine to call her, and I would try, hoping to gain her favor. Blaine seemingly just continued to shrug her off. At the winter concert for choir, we hit our first challenge as brothers. Bro, we need to talk, Blaine said. Yeah, I said, unwrapping a mic cord as we stood on stage getting ready for the concert. Jeremy, Xandar, and David were working on the speakers, so it was just the two of us. I don't know what to do about Katie. She won't lay off, Blaine mentioned. Yeah, I don't know either, I replied. I grappled internally. She's definitely got it bad for you. But the thing is, you've got a thing for her, Blaine returned. I know, I said. And I have a girlfriend, he continued. So what do we do? I asked. We stood there in silence for a moment because I don't think either of us had an answer. What if I did like Katie? He asked. I finished setting up the mic, and I looked at Blaine. If you do, you need to cut things off with Jennifer before you did anything. And just tell me, and I'll get out of the way. I had meant the offer I made, hearing Blaine even ponder the idea that he may have feelings for Katie. My stance was he had to be honest about things. He had to be honest to Jennifer. He had to be honest to me. And I could handle anything past that. On one hand, it hadn't surprised me that Katie would have feelings for Blaine. That just seemed to be something that was bound to happen sooner or later from the girlfriends I had. But Blaine asking me what to do if he liked her back, I was at a loss. Other than that, I would wish him the best. The choir concert went on without a hitch. Downbeat kicked it off with a single song, and then we passed it to chorale and then Shantae. And I can still remember standing backstage watching their songs and smiling as I watched Emily sing Rocking Around the Christmas Tree with the little bit of choreography that they had done. Having been tech for the show meant I was always backstage to assist with the equipment. And honestly, I felt a little bit like Quasimodo, hanging from the rafters at times. Probably another instance of self deprecating humor that I was perfectly fine with. Downbeat, we did the rest of our set, and acapella closed out the show, as was custom, with Carol of the Bells. All choir alumni in the audience were invited on stage to perform, and it was fun for me to see my senior and junior friends reunited with their graduated friends, and it gave me a chance to be part of choirs past, even if it was for just one song. This is also where one of my favorite pictures in all of school comes from. Diana, Tammy, and I together, and all smiles at the end of the concert. Back to back, belly to belly. Well, I don't give a damn, because I'm stone dead already. The day after the choir concert, Wendy brought in an a cappella group called Soundbites who were having a concert that night at our rival school, Desert Vista. And she wanted the choirs to see a real professional a cappella group in action. When they came into Downbeat, we listened to them sing, and they asked us what songs we had done, and we mentioned our knowing Java Jive, which then set up a bit of a jam session as we all sang together. During a cappella, they sang the song A Change in My Life, which a few of us knew, and then they handed out flyers for their concert. Diana and Blaine grabbed them. What do you think? You want to go? Blaine asked. Hell yeah, I do. Beep, Diana said, trying to cut off my word. We should go. I'd be willing to drive some of us, added Kiki H, smiling. I was going to bring a tape recorder to tape it too. Kiki had been in acapella for a couple of years and always struck me as just this really cool person. She was, by multiple accounts, also very stunning. She was an alto, which at this point I was leaning to outside of Diana being a soprano, probably was my favorite vocal section in all of the choir. And she was always so approachable and helpful. She even had a bit of a nerd streak in her as well, and always seemed to be jumping into social gatherings. Because she wasn't in Downbeat, this was also really going to be the first chance I had to hang out with her. Blaine and I were in. Katie and Pam were coming. Diana, Laura, and Kiki were joining in as well. We were going to be the Mountain Point Choir strike force, willing to infiltrate the opposing high school for a nighttime of fun. On our way there, Blaine and I had fun with the whole idea of a school rivalry and how we were invading, and when we got there, all seven of us joined together, bought our tickets, and sat close to the stage. Diana would tell me later about how she, Laura, and Kiki got into a bit of a traffic jam, and while trying to get into a lane no one was letting them in, Kiki turned to her companions. "Watch this," Kiki said. Diana told me she leaned out of her car window, batted her eyelashes, and said something to the effect of, "Hey there, cutie. You mind letting me into your lane? I've got a very important concert to go to, and no one's letting me in." Then she smiled from ear to ear, and of course, the guy in the next lane over let her in. Beautiful people have superpowers. The Soundbites were joined by another group, a more oldies doo-wop centric group called the Alley Cats, and when we sat in our seats, Katie immediately grabbed Blaine and they sat down in the row, followed by Pam and then Laura and Diana, Kiki, and me. The groups came on stage and each did a set of songs, maybe 20 to 30 minutes apiece. But it was one of the songs in the Soundbite set that immediately became my favorite. They launched into a calypso sound, and as the lyrics hit, I couldn't contain my smile. It was a zombie jamboree. Took place in the New York cemetery. It was a zombie jamboree. Took place in the New York cemetery. I could see Blaine, Diana, and Laura, all three of their heads just snap in my direction. And then everyone else followed. You see, when I get interested in something, I lean all the way forward in my chair, hands under my chin, and I was nearly out of my seat. By the time the chorus came around the third time, I had it memorized, and I think my happiness was infectious as Kiki laughed as I started singing along. "Back to back, man, belly to belly, well, I don't give a damn 'cause I'm stone dead already. Back to back, go belly to belly, it's a zombie jamboree." I could see Blaine starting to tap his leg and get into it, and I can remember Diana's smile as she saw how excited I was. Listen, I cannot stress how dorkily and absolutely happy I was. When they did some freestyling and ended it with a "huh, what they do, huh," we all laughed. And when the song was over, I exploded in applause. Zombie fan? Kiki asked. "One of my favorite things ever," I responded, still clapping. Let the new light come shining on through. Our group was having a great time as the soundbeats came back out after intermission and launched into a rendition of Shambhala. When they were done, we exploded with cheers, out applauding anyone else. We found a kinship with the group, and from the stage, as they looked out and saw us, they waved. "Hello, friends. It's so great you came out," the female singer said. We cheered back, and after a quick talk, they all started waving at us to come on stage. "Get up here." They filled us in on what they were thinking and introduced us as the members of Mountain Point's choir, which, of course, got a small reaction from any of the Desert Vista faithful as their rival school had indeed invaded their turf. But what followed was another fantastic memory. Surrounded by some of my most favorite people, we all sang to the song, "A Change in My Life." And I knew then, and look back now at, how much that choir influenced me that year. Good, bad, or indifferent, it still resonates. I've been lonely, I've been cheated, I've been misunderstood. I've been washed up, I've been put down, and told I'm no good. But with you I belong, 'cause you help me be strong. There's a change in my life since you came along. A few days after the concert, Kiki came to school with a smile and a little wrapped present for me. When I opened it, I looked at a little cassette tape that read, "Soundbites Concert." "I thought you'd like a copy of this, especially since you love zombies," she said, smiling. I played that tape so many times. With the holiday season in full gear, Downbeat was in decent demand. My mom asked if Downbeat would be willing to come to the hospital that she was a chaplain at. Wendy said it'd be a great idea, and we set the date close to the Christmas holiday. Downbeat was also asked by the Fultons, a prominent family in the area known for being home developers and also Wendy's grandparents, to perform at their Christmas party. While we caroled for them and their guests, we were also blown away that they had set aside a large area specifically for us to eat and relax in between our singing and meeting some of Wendy's family. The day we planned to carol at the hospital, I went early. I agreed to go with my mom to work that day and spent the day singing my way through the intensive care unit, general hospital areas, and finally arrived at the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit. The entire experience on my own was humbling, but it was here I got to witness a little bit of what music can do, what it can mean to people away from home. I had done a series of Christmas songs, singing only the melody so they were recognizable. In the NICU, though, I changed things up. I sang kids' songs and lullabies and listened to families and nurses tell stories. One, a premature baby, was the last stop on the way out. The parents talked to me about having their first child and just wanting to leave with her. They asked if I would sing. They didn't care what, but just something. As soon as you are able, woman, I am willing, I sang in a whisper, to make the break that we are on the brink of. I defaulted to what I know. Aria Speedwagon. Roll with the changes. It may not have been the most appropriate song or felt like the most uplifting, but it's what I knew. And the nurse tapped me on the arm. Keep going, she whispered. So I did. And when I was done, the parents asked me for another. So I started with another one. Son of a poor man. But if you ever get lonely, you just pick up the telephone, and the son of a poor man will bring you home, I whisper sang. And then, when it was over, the parents thanked me, I thanked them, and I headed out. As I did, the nurse stopped me. Do you know what happened? She asked, as her and my mom looked at me. I don't, I said, shaking my head. As you sang, she responded. Her stats went up. She could hear you. I'm sorry, what? Singing made her feel better, the nurse said. I smiled and left, waving at the family as I did, humbled by the entire thing. When Downbeat arrived, we made our way, caroling and singing in four-part harmony, and we passed the NICU. I waved again. Music can, and always will be, the great communicator. With concerts and caroling gigs behind us, and while the holidays can always be such a great time for families coming together over distance, in our little family, we were going to be dealing with heartbreak and separation. You put the boom boom into my heart. As things began building to Adrian and Jeremy moving, it crept in like a horror of a zombie movie. It was becoming real. Meanwhile, I was combing my library of music, listening to the radio, trying to put mixtapes together for friends. I originally was going to put it off until later in the year, but time being of the essence, I decided to start compiling the songs that reminded me of them immediately as a Christmas gift. Adrian had to have hers before she left. One song I chose for her was reminiscent of that sleepover night. The other revolved around her nickname. Yeah, I gave nicknames to my friends. It was just a thing I did. They were always given in love and reverence, and Adrian's was Gorgeous One, or Go, for short. I have found your songs, but I have to explain why, I said one night while on the phone with her after school. I was finishing up a portion of the tape as I explained my choices for a few of her songs. One of the songs was Talking in Your Sleep by the Romantics, referring, of course, to the sleepover. The catchy '80s song was our inside joke, and luckily, Adrian is a good sport, or at least she was with me. Anytime the song plays, I immediately remember that sleepover and laugh. The second song was Wake Me Up Before You Go Go by Wham. It was not a song on my radar of awesome '80s songs when I originally fell in love with the genre. I was a rock music guy. Adrian had a smile that could light up your day in an instant, and an attitude to match it. And this song had her nickname in it. Of course, I was going to include it. The countdown began to her leaving, and I had work to do. Meanwhile, Blaine still seemed to have had a thing for Adrian. With everything going on with Katie and he and Jennifer had recently broken up, I could still see it. I could see it in how he acted around her and how he looked at her. I told him, pushed him to tell her. I felt it was important to face these kinds of feelings, even if they were minor. He needed to make up his mind of what he wanted going forward, even if it meant all he could do was get it out there, write to her, call her, and as much as I tried, he wouldn't seem to budge. Just before winter break, it felt like so many things were moving at once. Katie's infatuation with Blaine was at an all-time high, and I was getting that sinking feeling that I was the third wheel, losing out to Blaine. Try as she might, Diana's advice for me to move into a new direction would be heard, but not heeded. Meanwhile, stopping me between downbeat and a cappella, Adrian asked me to sign a book for her. She was collecting signatures and things from friends in a book because she wouldn't be there for the yearbook later in the year. Jeremy had been wrapping up things with the school yearbook, and Blaine and I would do lunch with him. That enemy of mine, time, still creeping toward us. I took for granted all the times that I thought would last somehow. December 14th of 1999 was Adrian and Jeremy's last full day at school, and the sadness had settled in with everyone in the group. After school, our group all got together in the performing arts lobby outside of the auditorium, where we'd hung out and spent time between classes, before performances, or after school in days past. But the air was different. Emily was upset but trying her best to stay strong for her friends, and Adrian came over crying and gave me a hug. Standing there, all I could do was say things that would be okay, but still at that age, do you really trust that? When I got home, the music gods threw me a curveball. Richard Marx's Right Here Waiting was on the radio, a song I'd loved as a kid, but now hit me differently as a teenager. Hearing the lyrics with new meaning made everything worse, and I added the song to Adrian's mixtape. It would be a song Emily and I would revisit later. As I sat there, the phone rang. I answered it, and on the other line was Emily. She asked if I had time to talk. We were both in the same headspace, and she told me that all day she'd been trying to stay strong for everyone. She wasn't able to anymore, and she explained how she had already lost a friend, Kelly, who had moved earlier in the year. Now Adrian was leaving just days from then, and she could feel other friends just slipping away. She said she knew she could call me and that I would be there to listen to her. Let her cry. That's what she needed. I did listen to her, so broken-hearted and crying on the phone, wishing there was something more I could do for her. But all I could do is just be there for the friend I lovingly called my queen. The next day would be the final time that core stars team, the group forged early in the year thanks to video games, movies, shared experiences, would be together. As Blaine, Jeremy, Zan, Tammy, and I played video games, we didn't have to talk about it. We all knew. It fucking sucked. The night before Adrian left, I finished her mixtape. The plan was to go to school, shower her with as much love as possible, and take pictures before we said goodbye. After school on December 16th, we all grouped together. Emily, Meg, Aaron, Corey, Blaine, and I were there to see them off. Adrian made her rounds and said her goodbyes. Blaine wanted to take as many pictures as he could, pictures to this day I still have yet to see. But I remember all of us doing everything we could to get through it without falling apart. Some songs to remind you of me. Songs that will always remind me of you, I said, giving her the tape. She gave me a hug, we kissed each other on the cheek, and she handed me a note she wrote the night before. She had my address and phone number and promised to write. I promised I'd write back. She said she'd hold me to that. And then she got in her car and drove away. Blaine and I got in the ghetto-mobile, grabbed a bite to eat, and took a drive. As music coursed through the car as we drove down Pecos Road, we just let the music play a bit. I didn't have to say it. He knew it. He should have told her how he felt. Look in the mirror and see how you've been taken. Maddie, have you ever thought about changing up your look? Katie had asked me one night. What do you mean? I responded. The jean jacket look. Maybe changing it up. Don't wear it so much. Oh, I'd never thought about it, no, I said. The question caught me a little off guard. My whole jeans, white t-shirt, and jean jacket look had been constant through my freshman year and now into my sophomore. Wearing it became a staple, walking through high school with a denim suit of armor tied to whatever heroic version I thought of myself, the nerdy 80 kid out of time. But now, with a simple question asked by someone who'd captured my eye, I was having second thoughts. Well, maybe you should. Love you, Maddie, Katie said, flirtatiously before leaving. Shortly thereafter, I replaced the jean jacket with other, more seemingly approved by other jackets, longer shirts and t-shirts. I hung up my signature article of clothing without much of a thought. Something that didn't seem as big of a deal then as it does now. It'd all been part of my identity for a whole year and a half. The definitive me. And just like that, I jettisoned it away with the bat of a girl's eyelashes. Going into the choir Christmas party, Katie was in full-blown Blaine mode, and I was sort of stuck in the middle. I'd repeatedly listened to Katie in phone calls or when she was in the mood for one of her drives and go on and on about Blaine, or trying to get a hold of him, or wishing he'd see how much she loved him. I was caught between trying to be a good friend while also struggling to figure out my feelings for Katie, but also feeling like the writing on the wall was there. I was being rejected from my best friend. I still tried to persevere, helping her with guy problems. Still something. I had both become adept and constantly presented with by female friends. I've been told I was a safe person to talk about that kind of thing, so it just became something I would do. Maybe playing into that wannabe hero in me, as someone who wore his heart on his sleeve a lot of the time and being a hopeless romantic. It just was part of my personality, I guess. After conversing with assorted choir members at the party, Xandar walked up, apologizing for the interruption. Have you seen Tammy? Just a little earlier. Why? I responded. Let's go, he said with a sense of urgency. Zan and I found Tammy, who was visibly upset with what was going on between Katie and her brother Blaine. Blaine had been fervent that if anything was going to happen with Katie, he'd wanted my thoughts on it before going forward. Tammy just sat there, telling us that she just didn't like the whole thing. The three of us stepped outside and right into Blaine and Katie, off to the side of everyone else talking. The tension was palpable. Suddenly, Katie burst into tears and took off running down the street, Blaine immediately took off in a sprint after Katie, and M. came as Nathan M. and Pam walked out onto the porch and saw Katie and Blaine run off as well, Nathan turned to us. Fuck is going on? I asked as Zan, Tammy, and Pam looked on with me. I don't know, maybe I'll find out, Nathan said, and then he sprinted off after Blaine. Hold on, I'm coming. As the party continued on, Nathan came back, saying he saw Blaine catch up to Katie, and they got into Blaine's car and went for a drive. As we went back into the party, Pam, Zan, Tammy, and I noticed that no other people at the party seemed to see what happened except for us four. When Blaine returned to our puzzled faces, he just shook his head. It's just been a strange night. We ready to go? He said with a bit of confusion and a feeling of sadness. Want to tell us what that was about? I asked. Blaine shook his head, and we left. The rest of December passed with similar confusion. Katie obsessed over Blaine. Blaine worked to spurn her advances, and I wrestled with my own feelings about it and tried not to feel jealous or rejected while asking myself, what's wrong with me? Some days were better than others, and sometimes pettiness got the better of me. Adrian and I would write and call each other. It seemed like maybe I had been one of the more consistent of our friends to do so. As I found the letters later in life, it seemed like only a few weeks would go by between our correspondence. We would purchase phone cards to call each other long distance in those days, so as to not get those costs charged to our parents. I had hoped she would be back in February, but she told me that Prospect wasn't looking great. I told her if there was something I could do to let me know. She said she would. As the year came to an end, Emily brought me a Christmas gift, handing it to me in between Acapella and Shantae, a warm smile as she handed me the red and green wrapped gift. Keep in mind you have to read the note, she said. I read the note. Matt, from Emily. P.S. This didn't belong to me. I bought it for you. Yes, you, and only you. As I walked down the hall, I opened it and laughed, but didn't pull the present all the way out. 'Cause see, inside was a lacy blue thong. And I dropped my head and I laughed again. Wow, this is fantastic, I said to myself. Did you like your present? Emily asked in German class, and all I could do was blush. Yeah, I did. Merry Christmas, Matt, she grinned, elbowing me just the way friends do. There was no way in hell that I was going to be able to explain this one to my parents. As we headed to as the year headed to an end, Wendy got engaged, friends said goodbye until the new year, and others hung out over break. And on New Year's Day, 2000, Pam gave me one piece of prophetic advice. When it comes to romance, when you stop looking, you start finding it. So that puts us into the year 2000 and the end of this section of video. This is kind of a longer one, and then a bit of behind the scenes stuff. You're going to notice that my hairstyle may not change for like another video or so. Um, behind the scenes, I'm out of town in 2 weeks, which means I'm going to be recording things early to post, and then they'll be released as I go. So if you're all of a sudden watching these and going like, "Wow, his hair didn't change," and then all of a sudden he got again, that's why. Uh, anyway, as we continue barreling towards all that is Disney World, thanks again for anybody watching or subscribing or liking or commenting or everything like that. It does mean a lot. Only just because I love telling these memories because all of you, all of the people I shared them with at the time are just so still like ingrained in my head and being important people. Um, so it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of fun. And I do want to take a minute and say thanks to Blaine, who, after I had made mention about the freshman yearbook thing, proceeded to send me a photo of Corral from my freshman year that I'd never seen before. So that really helped add a little bit more into my database of, oh crap, I was a dorky looking kid. Um, but anyway, until the next video, which for me is going to be in a couple of minutes, but for you will be in a week, be good to yourself. Listen to some music. Keep on rolling.